Hello everyone, welcome to the Green Man channel. Hope you're doing good and well and you're sitting comfortably and ready for my Dream Theater album ranking from my least favourite album to my favourite album. These are just the full-length albums. There will be 15 of these albums that I will be tackling. Just a couple of the usual disclaimers. This is subjective, of course, so if your favourite album is quite low down in the list or is it even at the bottom, then, please don't get too upset. It's all a bit of fun, really. Just drop in the comments your own orders and how you feel about these albums. I look forward to reading your list. Even if maybe you've not listened to the whole discography, you can just put in the albums that you have listened to in your ranking order or something. That's all cool. So just get that out of the way. So Dream Theater formed way back in 1985. The first album came out, obviously, When Dream and Day Unite in 1989. You have the core members back then of Mike Portnoy, John Myung and John Petrucci forming the band. And of course, Mike Portnoy is no longer in the band now. He left ahead of the Dramatic Turn of Events album and was replaced by Mike Mangini. Also, he had a change, one of the other notable changes in the band was James LaBrie taking over on vocal duties from Charlie Dominici after their debut album, When Dream and Day Unite. I'm not going to waffle any longer. I'm just going to go straight into the list now, starting from my least favourite album at number 15. This is my least favourite album, and this is actually When Dream and Day Unite, the debut album from 1989. I felt this album actually sounded a lot like, not much like Dream Theater, really. It reminded me more of a band like Fate's Warning from that kind of an era. I thought Charlie Dominici sounds pretty good on the vocals, and I really like the song Status Seeker, but apart from that, I just don't find there's much on this album really I'm likely to go back to. Just an album that doesn't get me sort of too hyped or excited, and I'm just not likely to revisit this one much at all. So that's why it has come in at bottom, number 15. Number 14 is an album really which is quite heavily criticised, I think, by the Dream Theater fan base and a lot of people generally, and I can understand why. This is the Astonishing from 2016, a 2.25 hour epic length album. And going back to this, I really didn't much like this myself. I mean, at first particularly, I just felt, 2.25 hours, double disc album, and it's a lot of time to invest for anyone, even if you're a prog fan and you're patient. This is a bit of a test even for, I'd say, the most hardcore of prog fans. And actually, the songs are all pretty kind of short and melodic and more ballad-like than they are Dream Theater songs generally, which are kind of usually much longer with lots of big, expansive keyboard and guitar moments. But you don't really get that much in this album, interestingly. But what I like about the Astonishing is, in amongst all the kind of what you could call the fat, I guess, or the overindulgence of this album, I do think there are a few songs that are really, really good. So I kind of found, listening to this again, I really liked A Better Life. Moment of Betrayal, My Last Farewell, I thought was pretty cool, and a nice number and a nice vocal from James. So The Astonishing, not as bad as I remembered, but still definitely not, pretty far from one of my favourite albums. So it comes in at number 14 here. At number 13, we have 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence from 2002. Perhaps this is a bit of a controversial one to put as low down as this, but I just really cannot get into this album. I've really tried with 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence over quite a long period of time to get into this one, and I know it's a bit of is it a fan favourite? I feel like quite a few fans enjoy this album from what I can tell. But yeah, I mean, I do like I still like some of the album, but it's an hour and a half. And for what it is, I do find, again, there's just a certain indulgence. An album that's this long doesn't do enough for me to keep me really engaged. I love The Glass Prison, Blind Faith, and I like Solitary Shell quite a bit. I've always kind of enjoyed that song for some reason. I think it's kind of nice as well. Blind Faith in particular, I do like that song. I will say I'm a big fan of that song on 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. I think that's really good. But yeah, just never really gotten into 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, even though I know some people consider it maybe underrated and that kind of thing. But not so much for me, to be honest. But there we go. Number 12 is their self-titled album from 2013. Now, yeah, I'm not really big on this album. Like a lot of people, I think that it's kind of just I know it's a little generic at times, but I think the album sounds really good. I think this self-titled album sounds great, production's really good, and there is a song on here that is one of my all-time favourite Dream Theater songs. Maybe it would even be in my top 10 Dream Theater songs. I think it's fantastic. And that song is The Looking Glass. Just love the kind of chorus. I think maybe it's the pre-chorus as well to it. It's just a really, you know, kind of just a big song, but it hits all the right notes for me. I think James sounds great on this song. Love the Petrucci riff that's kind of the hook. And I think it's a great song, The Looking Glass. Yeah, awesome. Love it to bits. But yeah, the album as a whole, not so good, so the album comes at number 12. At number 11, we've got A View from the Top of the World from 2021, from, I was going to say last year, but now we're in 2023, the year before last year, right? Yeah, pretty good album. You know, we're starting to get into the albums now, which are very good, very decent albums. I think this one is a good album for sure. My favourite cuts on here, The Alien, Sleeping Giant. I also like Transcending Time quite a bit. More accessible track, maybe that one, but really like that one. For me, though, there's, I mean, in particular, the last track, the title track of this album, I really don't enjoy at all. I think it just goes on way too long for what it is. 20 minutes of it, I mean, I felt like the track was maybe a 7 or 8 minute affair, and it's just, for me, just too long for me, that final track. Not to say there aren't, you know, I'm conscious I've been a bit critical of some of the longer Dream Theater. I'm going to come soon to the longer cuts of theirs that I really love. They've done some really great epic songs, so I will be coming to those pretty soon, I think, the ones I really enjoy. But A View from the Top of the World comes in just at number 11, so yeah, I thought that might be a bit higher, but there's 10 albums I like that bit more. Number 10 then is Falling Into Infinity from 1997. I like this album quite a bit, actually. I think maybe this is a little bit of a dark horse. I mean, it's not an album I'd probably likely to go to as one of my favourites, to be honest, or to put on if I'm, you know, wanting to put on a CD or to listen to something on my iPlayer or whatever it is, iPlayer, iTunes. But yeah, I love Peruvian Sands. I think there's a lot of feeling in this album. It's kind of in that sort of 90s era where I think there's maybe a little bit of that flavour of the times in this album, or spirit of the times. I like Lines in the Sands, I think it is, and Take Away My Pain, which is one of those more kind of, maybe some people might find that song a bit cheesy, but I think it's pretty well delivered and executed. So yeah, like that song as well. Now we move on to number 9, and all these albums here, I think the next 2 or 3 are all really close together. You know, I don't think there's much to separate these in my own view. These albums, these next 3 could be in any order. I could just put these as a tie. I'm not gonna, I think that'd be a cop-out, but all the next 3 of these albums are pretty much all very, very close. I found this really difficult to separate these 3 albums. So Systematic Chaos is number 9. That's first in this kind of threesome of albums. Systematic Chaos, really like the first and last track on here, which are the longer tracks. In the Presence of Enemies Part 1 and 2. Great kind of bookends of the album. Really love those. Not so keen on Repentance or Ministry of Lost Souls, so to me it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Again, don't want to use the term dark horse too much in this video, but I do think Systematic Chaos is a bit of a dark horse in the Dream Theater discography. It comes in at number 9. Next up, I suppose you can have another one of those kind of arguments. This is another little bit of a dark horse album. Dramatic Turn of Events, 2011. First album with Mike Mangini. And you've got some really good epic songs on this album, actually, like Breaking All Illusions. My personal favourite on here is probably Bridges in the Sky. I think that's brilliant, that song. I really love that one. On the Backs of Angels is also a really good opener with some... almost a little bit of a sugar kind of chugging, a much heavier song. And there's quite a lot of that sort of heavy style of riffing in this album. It's like they went a little heavier than they did for the album previous to this, Black Clouds and Silver Linings. But yeah, I think A Dramatic Turn of Events, going back to this, it has grown on me a bit more. I think this would have been a bit lower if I'd have done this ranking, say, a year ago even. But it's actually come up quite high here at number 8. I think perhaps not many people's favourite album, this one, but yeah, I think it's sort of in the middle for me. Pretty much as per Systematic Chaos. Very, very, to me, those two albums, yeah, and the next one, not much between them, as I say. Coming in at number 7, we have Octavarium from 2005. I think another pretty underrated Dream Theater effort from the 2000s. And this one, you know, I find it a little tricky with the lot. Again, there's this sort of really, really long album close here that's like 24 minutes long. And I think, though, it does have some really good moments in that song, but it is so long, you do sort of have to just let it kind of, you have to soak it in, you know. And it's tough to listen to this album, but I think by the time you get to that last track, I find it a little bit hard to still be, oh yeah, I'm ready for a 24-minute, you know, epic Dream Theater track on this album. But this album has some great songs. I mean, These Walls, Panic Attack and Sacrifice Sons are probably my 3 favourites, but I actually like the kind of commercial sounding track on this album quite a bit too. I Walk Beside You. I like that. I know it's probably, to many, it's probably a bit of a cheesy one, but I think it hits all the right notes, despite having that commercial sound that it does have. So here's my next pick at number 6, and this is the most controversial take, I think, for this video, and easily probably the most controversial decision of mine to put this in at number 6. It's actually Images and Words. So this is seen as their kind of, a lot of people see this as their best album, I think. A lot of Dream Theater fans see it almost as iconic as well. It is seen as a bit of an iconic prog metal album, and many would put this at the top, or even in the top 2 or 3 albums, I think, of their rankings. And so I suppose, you know, I'm going to have to try and justify this a bit. I mean, for me, I think it's a good album still. It's at number 6, so obviously, you know, I still do hold a level of respect for this album. I still think it's a really good album, but I don't quite get, there's just like, there's something missing. It's like a spark for me is missing from Images and Words. All the songs are good, but they don't give me the wow factor of you know, some of the other Dream Theater albums. They just don't give me, you know, I do like good climaxes in music, and I do think this album has some of those moments, but I don't know, it's just one I just don't seem to gravitate to as much as the majority of other people. I don't find it necessarily, you know, even as instrumentally interesting as some of their other albums, to be honest. And for me, it's just, yeah, it just comes in at number 6, surprisingly. I will say, Metropolis Part 1, amazing song. Pull Me Under is also kind of cool. It's very catchy, but yeah, this album as a whole doesn't do it for me as much as it does many others, and that is just me being honest. I'm not doing it deliberately just to be obtuse and stuff. That is honestly how I feel about Images and Words. So coming in next at number 5, and really love this album, Black Clouds and Silver Linings. And this is one of their more, I would say this is quite a melodic album actually. You've got some really long cuts on here as well. But the thing is that what I really like about Black Clouds and Silver Linings, what I think it does better than some of their other albums, is the longer cuts, I think, are, you know, I know things like The Count of Tuscany, for example, is telling a really cool story and stuff. And I think it sort of does well to sort of keep it to, you know, keep you interested with the themes. The themes, all the melodic themes, I think are really cool in that song. And I love A Nightmare to Remember. It just feels like the phases of the longer cuts in this album are very interesting. I love the melodies that they use in these longer songs. I am a bit of a melody man, and I do like it when Dream Theater veer down that route quite a lot. And yeah, I do think that this album is actually really good, and I'm surprised in a way that, you know, it's one that's forgotten about quite a bit, this one. So I wanted to put it at number 5 because I just do really like the album a lot. Number 4, we've got Distance Over Time from 2019. And this just feels like, you know, as a unit, as a sort of an album, that the songs are quite short compared to a lot of Dream Theater's albums, but I like its accessibility. I like that it catches on very, very quickly. I like that about this album, but it's also a solid album. I do still think everything is kind of has a certain effortless flow to it that I really enjoy. Love Untethered Angel, Barstool Warriors, a fantastic song, I think. S2N, Out of Reach is, I think, just a really well written ballad. And you know, the thing about Dream Theater, their ballads, I think they sort of split opinions quite a bit. But this is a ballad I think that is perfect to me, because it's not over the top. It's not over the top. And it sort of knows when to hit the big moment in the song for me. It's a lovely build up to it. And when James kind of goes into that really big moment where he sings Out of Reach, I just think it's perfection to me. And I really love that song, and I love this album as a whole, as I say, with Untethered Angel, Paralysed, S2N, Pale Blue Dot, I think there's loads of good stuff, and that's why it's my number 4. I just love the album. Really like this one. So, moving on to number 3. We have the album that was the choice for the final episode of Dark Horse Discs, the series I did last year now. And this was the episode we had with JC Rocker Metal Reviews and Children on a Couch, talking about this album. And it made for a good finale to that series, I thought. And I do recommend you just check out that video, really, because I think we said all that pretty much needed to be said on this record. But really heavy album, you know. Got lots of memorable choruses, I think, on this album as well, but it's kind of rough. It's a bit more gritty, but it works. And I wouldn't mind Dream Theater doing more in the style of Train of Thought, to be honest, in the future maybe. I think it's a great album. My favourite ones on here I've mentioned before on the channel, but Endless Sacrifice, As I Am. I think Honour Thy Father's great too, and it's just a strong, darker affair from Dream Theater, that one. At number 2, we have the album that was my favourite Dream Theater album of all time, but it's no longer is. Interestingly, so my number 2 pick is Awake. And this is a great album. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic from start to finish, pretty much. I'd say, are there any bad tracks on here? Not really. I mean, 1 or 2 maybe I don't care quite as much about, which is maybe why it's just not quite maintained its top spot in my order. But I mean, I think, do you know what, the second half of this album is really, really strong. The Mirror, Lie, Lifting Shadows Off a Dream is immense. Scarred is a phenomenal 10-minute track, I think, towards the end of this album. You've got Space Divest at the end. I think it's great. So that's my number 2 pick, Awake. Brings us on to my number 1 album of Dream Theater's, rather my favourite album of all time from theirs, and it's Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory. There we go, there it is on CD. And this is when Jordan Rudess came into the band for this album, and what I found interesting was reading that Dream Theater took creative control from the label. I believe that Mike Portnoy had a say in making this happen, that they got total creative control of this album, and I think that paid off for this particular album anyway, because it's phenomenal. It tells a really interesting story. It's very much a concept album. Yes, it's a long album, but it's a long album that never really lets up. It always keeps you, I think, keeps you involved. Whether, you know, just to highlight a few of my favourite moments on this album, because there are many, but you know, things like the transition from Strange Deja Vu to Through My Words, the crescendo of those mind-blowing keyboard and guitar syncing up in the Dance of Eternity, or whether it's the final kind of heartfelt chorus from James LaBrie in The Spirit Carries On. There's just so much to enjoy in this album. It is just a great Dream Theater album. What more can I say? I think I've said enough. I think I've said more than enough. So it wouldn't be a Dream Theater video though unless it was pretty long. So maybe I need to just sit in silence for another couple of hours, and that will be... No, I'm not going to do that. Alright, so thanks everybody for watching this ranking. Do drop your comments in the comments and let me know how you'd rank these albums. Otherwise, from me, thanks for watching this Saturday premiere. Next Saturday's premiere is the Conjuring Universe films ranked. So another rankings, another list. The lists never really end, do they? They just go on and on and on and on and on and on. A bit like the Astonishing. Anyway, from me, take care, everybody. Bye for now.